Sorry, I've got a lot of cough drops, just so you know. I've just been one. I have the opportunity to introduce our speaker for the day, and but priorities first, all right? I'm glad my brother's here and all that, blah, blah, blah. But I've got to show you this first, and that's my new grandbaby, all right? Yeah, that's right. Brady and Michaela just had Douglas Michael was born this week. Not Michael Douglas, Douglas Michael, but he's born this week. And so we're happy. Grandkid number 5, I'm starting to lose count, and that happens when you get to this age, right? Anyway, so no, it's fantastic. I just want to share that with you, that's for sure. And I want to give a shout out to everybody in Shelbyville and Newton, and there you go. And Shelbyville people who are here today, too. There you go. But I do want to introduce my brother, Brant Hansen. Here's the thing. I could go on and tell you his resume, I guess, about all the things that he does. He has a really famous podcast. He's an author. He's written a lot of books. A lot of you probably maybe have read, I know some of you have read his books and so forth. But you can look that up on Google or whatever, because I get to introduce him, so I get to do it my way, right? Somebody talk about the things that are really important. First of all, I remember one of my biggest memories with my brother is us pretending to be the 1979 Boston Red Sox out in the backyard. He was Butch Hobson, who played third base. I was Dwight Evans, who played right field. And we weren't even Red Sox fans. We were Cardinal fans, always have been. But for some reason, we just got into this almost every single day. We had to go out and play our own game of baseball. My brother and I have been, as far as I'm concerned, have been pretty close. I met him a long time ago in the hallways of our house. And ever since then, we just kind of hung out and did a lot of stuff together. And I just want to tell you a couple things and I'm sure because of his brother, I get to introduce him this way. A lot of people may have said a lot of things about him. I know he's heard a lot of things about him. But what I can tell you is this. Over the years, my brother and I have gone through a lot together. We have how it is with family. And there's sometimes we've kind of held on to each other, I think, just to stay in faith, and to hold on to Jesus. And the one thing I've learned from him is that over the years, I've seen him grown to a place of where following Jesus for him really is an everyday thing. In other words, it's easy to hear people on the air and radio or podcasting or to read their books. It's easy and still not really know who they are and not really sure where they're at in their faith. But what I can reassure you is this, is my brother really, really loves Jesus. He loves his family. He really cares about what he's doing. And he's got a huge heart for the poorest of the poor in this world and does an incredible work that I'm sure if you just ask him for a few seconds, he will tell you all about because it's dear to his heart. But most importantly, even though he's my little brother, I look up to him. So.
Thank you. That was our second hug today. We already hugged at Panera. So I'm honored to be here. I really am. Of course, I'm like Darren. I'm from Assumption, Illinois, and it's neat to be back in Central Illinois. I live in South Florida now, but I do miss it. And you're my people, so I'm honored. Also, he may have told you or not. I don't know if he briefed you on this. I'm really awkward. So welcome to my circle of awkward I've drawn you into. And I'm on the autism spectrum, if you're familiar with that. I have what used to be called Asperger's, but it's good to be on the radio because nobody can see me. It's awesome. Like, really. I have all like the wrong body language. My wife's helped me a lot over the years, but she's said stuff like, Brant, don't stand like that. And I'm like, what's the matter with how I'm standing? You look like Data from Star Trek. I'm like, cool. And then, so she's like, no, because it doesn't put people at ease if you have your weight like evenly distributed over your feet. I'm like, that's so I can escape a social situation. Like, She said, no, what you should do to put people at ease. She actually taught me this. So this is cool if there's any awkward people. She said, you put your weight on one leg, and then you bend your knee a little bit, and you put your hand in here like this. And then everybody's cool. So putting you at ease. I hope this works this morning. So the awkwardness, by the way, started, just a little biographical information. So can you show the first slide? This is me when I was 2 years old, just to give you a little, yeah. Can't believe my mom made me wear glasses like that, but then that's okay. And then the second thing, this is me in grade school, getting even cooler and more suave. And this is my prom picture from Assumption. All right. Where's your date, you might ask? And I think, can you put that back up there? Because it's important. Where is your date? It's a great question. It's a wonderful question. And I didn't have a date. But other people ask, well, why is your pant leg so short? And I don't have an answer for that either. And then they're like, why is your right arm 6 inches longer than your left arm? So I tell people, that's what we all did in the 80s. We were all like this. That's just how we walked around. So anyway, yeah, been pretty awkward. Now I do radio, and it is nice. Although what's weird about radio, or any kind of anything, you could do customer service. No matter what you say, makes people mad. No matter what. I gave the weather forecast, you guys. This was in South Florida, and I said, hey, it's going to be a little bit warmer than it should be for this time of year. High of 82, tomorrow high of 77, and somebody called. And on Christian radio, they don't say they're mad. They just say they're disappointed with you. So I get calls, it's like, hello, really disappointed with you. Like, okay, why? Your weather forecast. Like, weather forecast, you're disappointed with? Yeah, you said it's going to be warmer than it should be for this time of year, but God ordains the weather. It's going to be exactly what it should be for this time. Like, okay. So it's constant stuff like that. I didn't plan to do this, but it turned out this way. If you ever hear the MetaShare commercials on the air, okay, so that's me. Yeah, don't applaud for the commercials. Sorry, I was nice though. So all I do is I'm not being obnoxious. I'm not talking like a radio guy or anything like that. I'm just being normal, Central Illinois accent guy. It's on across the country, but they like, okay, he sounds like he's from the Midwest or whatever. And I just say, you can say $500 a month, blah, 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 blah. It's completely benign, innocuous. There's nothing wrong with this commercial. I get complaints about that, about a commercial. I don't even know how they hunt me down. Like, I don't even know. But I got a tweet, and I love this tweet because I actually memorized it. They tweeted at me. They said, dude, you're the worst. Every time I hear your voice on the radio, I want to drive my Jeep into a tree. I was like, okay. So my response was, okay, but before you do that, let me tell you about a health plan where you can save $500. I actually did wonder, though. I was like, so I grew up knowing, and you probably have too, that there's righteous anger and there's unrighteous anger. Like, people can be angry about dumb things, but there's some things we need to be angry about and stay angry about. That's what I was taught. And that's, when you talk about it on the air, everybody's like, yeah, but there's righteous anger. We need to be angry about some things. I'm like, okay, I totally believe that. How long, I actually asked this on the air though, like when people attack me for being on the air for nothing, how long should I be angry about that? Like a day, a week? Or what about like really horrible stuff, like genuinely evil stuff that people have done to me? How long do I hang on to this? A year? Because if it's righteous, I need to hang on to it, but how long? Forever? All the way to the grave? Like, how does this work? But what's interesting is I was talking about this stuff on the air about a particularly evil thing that happened in the news. I was like, on it genuinely, how long am I supposed to stay angry about this thing that's obviously evil and sinful and awful? And no one could answer the question. So I was studying the Bible and I was reading up on it, like how long, for righteous anger, how long are we supposed to keep it? There's no answer for that because righteous anger for humans is not in the Bible. It's shocking. And when you hear me say that, at first you must be like, no, that can't be. Please hear me out. I know it's totally counterintuitive, but it's not. Righteous anger in the Bible is always God's anger. His anger is righteous, mine's not. Every time. And that's why we're never told to hold on to our anger. Never once are we told that. We're supposed to get rid of our anger. But people will be like, but Brant, don't you know about, can you put the scripture up? Ephesians 4:26. They'd be like, oh, Brant, don't you know about this scripture? And people have this memorized. They're like, it says, when you're angry, do not sin. So therefore, it means it's not sin, which means sometimes it's good. You should stay angry about some stuff. So we have this scripture memorized, and that's cool because it's not sin. The first, like the flash of anger that we have, that's a fight or flight response to threat. Totally normal, totally human, happens. But the weird thing about it is, you see the comma here? There's a comma. This is only part of the verse, and no one memorizes the second part of the verse. It's kind of funny. They only memorize the first half of the verse. What's the rest of the verse say about this righteous anger? Can you show the next slide there, Melissa? When you're angry, do not sin, comma, and be sure to stop being angry by the end of the day. Yeah, so we remember the first half of the verse because we want to justify our anger, why it's righteous. And we use that first half of the verse like for make an entire theology out of it, of righteous anger. My anger is righteous. Well, then why are you supposed to get rid of it now if it's righteous? 5 verses later, go ahead and show the next slide. 5 verses later, it says, do not be bitter or angry or mad. The Bible's so consistent. Every time anger is talked about for humans, it's negative. Every single time. It's not in the good list of things. It's always in a bad list. It's not like in the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, anger, gentleness, faith. Wait, what? But you would think it was the way that people think about righteous anger. I'm supposed to be angry about stuff. And don't we need to get angry to bring about God's righteousness into the world? People will say that. I need to be angry to bring about God's righteousness into the world. Can you show the next slide? Here's a verse nobody memorizes. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. And people are like, well, then what about all the injustice in the world? We're supposed to, we got to be angry about that. Don't we have to be angry? Like, no. You're supposed to do something about it. But we like to pat ourselves on the back for getting angry about stuff. Have you noticed that about our culture? Like, it's like, see how angry I am about this? I'm angry that you're not as angry about this as I am. I mean, that's Twitter, right? I mean, this is how we conduct ourselves. We think that it's righteous to be angry about stuff. And we'll say, well, Jesus went into the temple. He got angry. My friend Sherry, I love how she puts it. She's like, honey, you ain't Jesus in that story. You're the money changer. See, God's entitled to certain things that we're not because he's holy and he's not a sinner. We're sinners. So we can't be trusted with anger. I know it sounds totally counterintuitive, but it's so biblical and it winds up, it's so genius with the way to live. What we're supposed to do with this. And this is so interesting to me because you can read Washington Post, New York Times, New Yorker, whatever, the Atlantic, they all have articles about the epidemic of anger in our culture. They all do. And then they'll talk to psychologists, psychiatrists, social scientists. What do we do with this anger problem? Count to 10, breathe deep, go for a walk, listen to some music. They never mention the one thing that actually works. Forgiveness. That's it. We're supposed to forgive as we've been forgiven. This is the key to freedom. It does not mean, see, people get confused on this. They'll say, well, Brad, are you saying I have to stay in an abusive relationship with somebody? I'm supposed to just ignore it? Not at all. Quite the opposite, actually. You can still have boundaries. But if you don't forgive that person, you are staying in a relationship with them for the rest of your life in your head. The way of Jesus is the way to freedom. There may be people who have hurt you deeply along the way, and I totally know it. That's part of being human. Me too. I don't want to carry that to the grave, and I don't want it to poison the rest of my relationships. Everything Jesus tells us to do is genius. When he talks about getting rid of anger in the Sermon on the Mount, that's a better way to live. And it's so funny. I was listening to this guy. His name is Robert Sapolsky, and if you're a big fan of endocrinologists, you know about him. but he's a primate neuroendocrinologist at Stanford. And I thought this was so funny. He wrote this book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Have you heard of this? It's so good. He's talking about why humans get ulcers and animals generally don't. Like, why is that? What's up? And he explains why. And what's really interesting, please remember this, he identifies himself as a, what do you call it, a militant atheist. And I think that's so funny because the whole book is about like, okay, you have a fight or flight response. Somebody crosses you or threatens you or cuts you off in traffic. You get this rush of, ugh. Okay, that's a physiological thing. That's like, there's an adrenaline rush, your cortisol level spikes, your blood pressure spikes. Like, there's all this stuff that happens in your body. He said that's there for a purpose so that you can get out of that situation or fight your way through it. So a zebra, to his point, that happens. They see a lion, they're like, oh my gosh, a lion. They take off running. Like, what do I do? All of this stuff happens to their body, and it's to make them faster. So literally, they're like getting rid of stuff as they run. Like, and there are systems that actually shut down. Your insulin level changes, your blood sugar, like all of this stuff happens as a result of that fight or flight response. But his point is, for the zebra, that lasts about 30 seconds. And then it's over. One way or the other, it's over, right? I mean, that's the way it's supposed to work. But he said only humans, though, can keep that in their system. And it kills you. Only humans can keep that sense of threat and even harbor it and not let it go. And it makes, he went down the list of physiological changes. It's fascinating, you guys. It's like, it makes you look older. It changes your skin. It causes weight gain. It causes your appetite to increase. There's all these physiological changes by storing anger, keeping it in your system. And he talks about, too, how stress causes ulcers from things that haven't even happened yet. You might feel threatened or angry about something that hasn't even happened. Could happen next week. Could happen on election day. All of these potential threats you borrow from tomorrow, the next day, next week, and it's killing you. It literally causes heart problems and shortens your lifespan. So his conclusion, and this is what I think is so funny, his conclusion was, I listened to him talking to his students, his conclusion was, here's what I would say to do. He said, you know what? Think about the animals. Like, animals don't borrow trouble from tomorrow. They're not thinking about next week. They're not stressed out. They're just today. It's not going to help you to stress out tomorrow. It's not going to lengthen your life. Just focus on today. Because today has enough problems of its own. And so you guys laughing about this? You recognize what he's saying here? Because I'm like, I've heard this before somewhere. Jesus himself says, consider the lilies of the field, consider the birds of the air. They're not worried about tomorrow. Don't be anxious. Tomorrow's got enough, today's got enough on its own. Like, he's literally saying something in conclusion that Jesus already arrived at. And think about how awesome that is, that God would be that nice to us. That he would take the form of a man and say, I made you. I know what your body can handle and what it can't. I'm telling you, don't borrow trouble. And also let go of your anger before the sun goes down. It'll kill you. Dallas Willard said, this is a big deal. What we're talking about right now is a big deal. It's not just another thing. This is actually discipleship. Like, you bless your enemies, you love those who are a problem to you. It's a better way of life. But that's actually doing the Jesus stuff, and it will free you. So, I get, somebody just cut me off on Mid-America Boulevard out here. Okay. Somebody was, driving obnoxiously on 57. Okay, all right. I got it. I feel you. But I always want to tell people, okay, have you ever been in traffic before? Because, that's what people do. But we're continuously shocked by humans doing human stuff. Have you noticed that? Every day. I can't believe my boss said that. Does your boss say stuff like that? Yeah. I can't believe my mom said that. How long has your mom been doing stuff like that? 78 years. Okay, well, now it's time to believe. Humans do human stuff. We know this. We have this advantage if you're a Jesus follower, you know this. It even says in Scripture, like when the disciples were having some conversation that was really dumb and selfish, it said, but Jesus knew what they were thinking. No one had to tell Jesus what men were like, right? So we should have this insight as people who follow. I know people are broken. I got it. I'm not going to be shocked again today. I'm not going to watch the news again and be shocked that those people that I disagree with did that stuff I disagree with. I'm not. But to live in perpetual anger, perpetual shock is going to kill me. So what I do is wake up in the morning. So what I'm trying to do in this book, I wrote the Unoffendable book. I talk about this, but I decide in the morning I'm not going to be offended by people today. I'm going to forgive them in advance. Because I know humans are humans. And here's the thing, if you're like, well, how in the world would you forgive people? Like some people are just, they don't deserve it. You know what? You're right. They don't. They don't deserve it. That person that did that awful thing to you, maybe it's totally horrible. They don't deserve it. But I don't forgive people because they deserve it. I forgive people because I didn't deserve it. That's the whole point. So I believe I'm partially guilty or entirely guilty of what happened on Calvary, where an innocent man was executed. Like, if you believe that, like, can I extend that grace? He's forgiven me. Like, can I extend that grace to other people? I think it'd be good. Again, people are like, well, yeah, but we really do need to be angry about what's happening with this issue and that issue. And like, absolutely, I can understand the anger. I get to travel the world and stuff. I can tell you 100 other things you could be angry about, really bad. And you could be angry all the time until you're dead. And it'll destroy all your relationships. But yeah, you can be angry about it. I mean, it's really evil stuff. I get it. However, if you want to address a problem, if you actually want to do something about injustice, that thing you're angry about, you'll do it better without anger. Because anger doesn't enhance your judgment, it clouds it. It makes it worse. This is why, I'll fight injustice. I've got to be angry to fight injustice. Do you? Well, okay, so police, do you think they do their job better when they're angry? I don't think so. Judges, you want angry judges? We need them to mete out justice with righteous anger. No, we don't want that. Angry juries, angry military, it doesn't enhance judgment. Whatever you do with anger, you can do better without it. You can have boundaries. It's actually pretty cool when you have boundaries and it's not out of anger, but this is how it's going to happen. It's actually kind of intimidating to people. They're like, why are you so self-controlled? I get a kick out of this too, because we always think we're right about everything, right? So there's a million things we can be angry about. We always think we're right. I saw this show. You ever see this show called The People's Court? You have to be kind of old, all right? All right, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, you have to be my age or up. But it was a court show, and I'd watch this after school every day. And the funny thing was, they would always introduce the plaintiff first. So the plaintiff, their case, and they would say the plaintiff's case. And I remember this case specifically one day from school. They walked in, it was a huge family, and they announced the guy's thing. I'm doing this because they had this little half door thing for some reason. But they'd walk in, and it was like, dun, 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 and they walk in. They'd be like, the plaintiff, and I remember this case, the plaintiff and his family of 7 all got violently ill at the defendant's pizza restaurant from food poisoning, and they're suing for $1,500 for pain and suffering. They all were violently ill for 24 hours with food poisoning. And so I hear that, I'm like, oh my goodness, all 7 of them got sick. Like, why is this even a case? I mean, all 7 got sick. Hello, over, case closed. Then they introduced the defendant. The defendant says he doesn't even own a pizza restaurant, has no idea what. Like, what? All right, now we got a case. All right, now it's on. But it's so funny because every time I'd watch this show, the plaintiff always seemed right because they'd say their side first. And there's literally a proverb. There's a proverb that says, point blank, the first to testify always seems right until he's cross-examined. Well, guess who the first to testify is in my head in every conflict? It's me. I think I'm right about everything. But some humility goes a long way. And at the beginning of the day, I'm telling you, this becomes a spiritual practice and you will get better at forgiveness. The beginning of the day, I don't care how old you are or where you are in life, start doing this. I'm going to forgive people in advance because of what God has done for me. See, what happens is that puts you in a grateful mode at the very beginning of the day. I'm so thankful for what God has done for me. I'm going to extend that to other people. And I'm telling you, it gets easier. It actually gets easier. It becomes a practice. And when somebody cuts you off in traffic, I call traffic forgiveness practice, by the way. I think because it really is. It's kind of a low leverage situation where that wasn't personal, what that person just did. They're toxic or whatever. They got problems, okay? You could pray for them, God's blessing on them. Pray for peace for them. Your own body temperature will drop. Blessing your enemies, Jesus tells us to do that for our own good. This is a better way to live. Everything Jesus says about how to live is a better way to live. He even said so. My way is easier and lighter. You know what? It can be hard to follow Jesus. You know what's harder? Not following Jesus. It's a harder way to live. Forgiveness is hard. It was so neat, by the way. I did not plan this, but it's so cool. I don't know if Darren told you, he probably didn't, which is fine. But like last year, I was on Good Morning America talking about this. And I had like 4 minutes. But it was nice to talk to these anchors and talk about Jesus on Good Morning America. But one of the anchors is like, it's so hard to forgive people, though. I mean, come on. And I was like, yeah, it is. You know what's harder? Living a life of unforgiveness. That's way harder. Everything Jesus tells us is brilliant. He knows how to live. He made us. This is a way out of the anger trap. It's thanksgiving to God that he's forgiven us, and we extend that to other people. And you can do this. It's a beautiful thing. I had to coach here's how it happened. My son, who's also a nerd like me, didn't play any sports, and my wife's like, you need to sign him up for some sports. I'm like, okay. You need to sign up for sports. And he's like, why? I said, why? And she said, because this is America. And I was like, okay, let's go, sports. And signed him up for flag football. And he was on a team called the Rams. And we got to the first practice to drop him off, and the Rams did not have a coach. And the Park District people said, hey, can you coach? I'm like, no, I'm not gonna. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have time. And the other teams, I kid you not, the teams all had we had blue T-shirts for the Rams, and the yellow team over there, I counted, they had 7 assistant coaches already, first practice. They're walking around like doing drills and stuff and this and that. And, our team's just trying to get the ball inflated, like, okay. So I went home. My wife said, hey, can you coach Justice's team? I'm like, no, I really don't have time, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to do that, so no. No. Park District calls again. Mr. Hanson, sorry, the Rams don't have a coach. We want to ask again. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just don't. I'm not interested. And so I got to the second practice. This kid named Jared, he's like this tall, long stringy hair, and we're just playing catch. There's still no coach. And he's like, are you going to be our coach? And I catch it, and I'm like, nope. He's like, well, and he stops and looks at me. He's like, well, can I at least call you coach? Because I've always wanted to call somebody coach. And I'm like, nope. No, I didn't do nope the second time. I was like, okay. So I came home with all the footballs in a bag and pylons. Like, I guess I'm the coach of the Rams. We went 0-12. And, yeah. So, but here's the worst part. We literally, I'm not kidding, we were this bad. I was not good, and the kids were not good athletes, and I was an even worse coach. We did not score for 12 games. Shut out. So the season's almost mercifully over. There's 1 game left. I'm not making this up. Guess who we're playing? It's a yellow team with all those assistant coaches and like electronics and iPads and all that sort of stuff. They're 12-0. I mean, I know what's going to happen. I I mean, we're kind of like, okay, what's our last game? Here we go. Do your best, kids. You know, we haven't scored the entire season. They kicked off to us. I'm not making this up. Kid on our team named Christian, it bounced a couple times. He picks it up and winds his way all the way back to the house, takes it back for a touchdown. We're up 6-0. And I'm like, all right, okay. This is going to be one of those Christian movies. Probably like inspiring coach of the year. Final score was 72-6. They ran off 72 unanswered on us. And, but what happened after that? So our kids were dejected, like, well, the season's over. We went 0-13. It's like, it's all right, it's all right. At that moment, and I'd forgotten this was going to happen, a huge stretch white limousine pulls onto the field with Rams flags on the front. A mom had done this. Like, that's our team. The limousine pulls up in the middle of the grass, and a chauffeur gets out, and the kids are like, is that for us? I was like, yeah, we're having our pizza party and stuff. We're doing all that. I forgot. That's for you. And they get in, and they're like, whoa. And they're like high-fiving each other, and they're getting in, and they're like, wow, this is incredible. I mean, they went from dejected to like, oh, my goodness. And the chauffeur the car drives off. I'm picturing the look on the yellow team's face to this day, and it does my heart so much good. No, they were sweet kids too. But honestly, as that limo was driving off with the 0-13 losers of the game, I was like, that's the best picture of the kingdom of God I think I've ever seen in my life. Like, we've all blown it. You know that. And yet, the limo's coming anyway. For those who want to get in. In fact, it's already come. The kingdom is here. If you want to step into it, and you may feel like, well, I'm a moral failure. You don't realize my background. Oh no, God does. He still loves you. I just learned something a couple weeks ago. You know, when Adam and Eve leave the garden because they failed, God goes with them. He goes looking for them, and he goes with them. He doesn't abandon them. But he makes clothes for them because they're ashamed of themselves. And this is what I just learned. The word there for the clothes that God makes for them, I always thought the clothes he made, I always pictured like, I don't know, like the Flintstones or something, like something, I don't know, cave. But the word there is keoneth in the Hebrew. And I did not know this until recently. Those clothes, that word keoneth, it's only used one more time in Genesis. It's to describe the coat that Joseph has. This like regal coat. And then it shows up later in the Old Testament. It's royal priestly garments. It's a royal coat. They're ashamed of it. They have blown it. They're ashamed of themselves. And God covers them like a king and a queen on their way out. And he goes with them. He really loves us. So I want to extend that to other people. I want other people to see that, because I'm so grateful for what God's done for me. And no matter what they've done in their lives, I know what God's done in mine, and so I'm going to extend grace to them, and leave the final judgment to God. And I'm telling you, this way of life changes everything. It will change you. And I think it actually changes how you react to things. You become more like Jesus, how you react to people. And it's very compelling. So thank you for listening to me. I will close with prayer, and then we'll do another song. God, thank you for the people who are here. I pray that we would take this challenge and this way out of anger seriously. We don't want to live like that anymore. Thank you that you handle anger. You handle vengeance. There are things that only you can handle, and we can hand it to you and live a lighter, more free life. Thank you for being so good to us. And we pray that